Now, this is the last part of the setup, and it's called customization. Now, one thing before we go on, this part is basically non-essential. In other words, as you can see, you already have some default values, and those are pretty much the ones I would use if I were using the template, and that's what I used in the demo. So if you just want, you can skip this completely and just hit save, but obviously it gives you some more options as to how you can configure your template. And the other thing I want to emphasize is that you can always come back to this part anytime later on when you're using the template. Even the parts here, this, for example, this page search, you can enable it anytime later in the future. Likewise, the color settings, that can all be changed. However, what you cannot change is, as I said, you can even change the location, but you're probably not going to do that. But you can change the language, but you cannot change your MySQL, for example, or rather you can, but only if you really changed your host and everything. Paths, yes, you can change that if you really changed the paths, if you move them to another directory. But what you cannot change, one thing that you can never change is this. That's the units, the database units, because if you change that, the new values that would be updated and that would be inserted into the database after you made this change would no longer match with the previous units, and it would just make a complete mess, and all your statistics would be wrong. So this one thing is something that has to stay as it is. Right. So let's go back to the customization. So first thing, this is the background, and what I mean by background is, as you can see here, you can set the width of the template of your actual page, and what that is if I go to the demo, I'll show you what I mean. Okay, well, you can see that the page sort of spans. In this case, this is the default. As I said, this demo uses the default values. So you can see that I have it set to 85%, and that's this. So that's from here to here. It's 85% of my screen. If I made my screen narrower, there would still be this space, and you would have 7.5% on both sides. So that would be 100 in total. And this here is basically the background. So here I specify what I want for my background. In this case, I have some gradient, but I can only, if I delete this, it's only going to be one color. In this case, this is black. If I click that, I can use the color picker to choose blue. And again, if you just select one color here, it's going to have a uniform color like this. If I want a gradient, I can choose another color. Let's say green. Well, that looks awful, but whatever. And I can change the gradient type. Or I can even use a background image. If you click the background image, the last option, it again asks you for a URL that you insert here, something like HTTP something, and then .jpgs, for example, and it would stretch the image to the page size. Obviously, what you can also do is, in this field for the width, you can either use percentages or you can use pixels. So I could use something like this. This would also work. And if you do something like this, that means that your page is going to span the full width of the screen. And in that case, the background is irrelevant because you never see it. You always have this 100%. So if I change this to 100%, there won't be these edges. The page would be full width, and as I said, and then this is irrelevant. Now you see these. We'll get to blocks later on, but just to give you an idea, a block is this. A block is basically like a widget on your home page. So all these are blocks. This is one block here. This is another block. This is another block. As I said, we'll talk about those later. For now, here you set up the way you want them to look. So here is an example. And this example is a live preview of whatever you set up here. Block radius is the roundness of the borders. So if I had this to 0 pixels, it would have sharp edges like this. But look what happens when I increase this. Now I'm going to put it to something really large so that you can see the difference, right? So now we see, and obviously because it's hard to tell well, I can imagine that you don't know, well, should I put 10, should I put 5? That's why you have this preview here. This is exactly what you're going to get here. So if I change this to, again, just to show you what it is, don't put it this large, but if I made it like this, these edges, these here, would be that large. But as I said, don't put it too big, because then some things might not display correctly. As you can see, for example, this image, if I had it like that, you wouldn't see it. So I would, if I were you, I would either leave it to 0, or I would say something like 5. Well, that's maybe not too much, but maybe 10. Yeah, that looks pretty much okay. Bevel effect. Now, I'm not a big fan of these 3D shadows and 3D effects, 3D fonts and everything, but people asked for it. So you have the option to put the bevel effect, and that's sort of like an effect that creates, it looks like it's 3D. So watch the borders here. If I change it to 5 pixels, I get this sort of, it looks like if it was 3D, if it was sort of going towards you. If I just make it really large to show you what I mean, yeah, this is what you would get. And again, we're talking about all these boxes here, these blocks. And border width, I think that's pretty much self-explanatory. So that's just the border here that you see. So here I have it, I think I have 0 here, as you can see. But if I put it to something like, I don't know, 5 pixels again, that's the border. But again, if I were you, I would probably use maybe 10 there, 0 here, and here I would probably put something like 2. It's up to you. Headings, again, something I would probably leave off, but if you want, you can put a shadow for the headings. This is the heading, and headings are usually those are headings. And you can either put a small shadow or a large shadow like this. And body text shadow, if I were you, I would definitely leave that off. But what that would do is basically all text on your page, everything you see would have a shadow. So either you use the small one or the large one, like this. Again, I did that because some people asked for it, but if I were you, I would just leave this on. Header left image, that's by default, you will see a flag of your country, whatever country you specify here, where we have the location. Here I have CZ, Czech Republic. So for that, I would get the Czech flag, which you see here. So that's this image here. So that's the default setting. Just in case you wanted to use your own image, for example, some people put a logo here. If they have a logo, then you would simply click custom and you would provide the URL in the field here. Make sure you include the HTTP, something like this, and then at the end it would be something .jpg or PNG. You would probably use a PNG because you want it to be transparent so that it looks nice here. But make sure that the image looks okay when it's this size, because it will be resized to fit this. So if you put in some large photo, it won't work because it would be really small. Header title, this text. First of all, you can enable it or disable it. If you have it enabled, which is the default, title is this. Header title is this, and this is the header subtitle. So this text is the text here. So in this case, in the demo, I have the title set to media template and the subtitle set to Brno, which is the city where I live. So that's what you select here. Mobile header, that's as I said, that's for the mobile version. So if we just switch to the mobile version, that would be here. That would be the image that's the background of this header. But I would probably leave it as it is because if you insert an image here, it might be hard to read. But if you really want to, then again, you can put an image here, an HTTP something, and it will insert that image. It will scale it to this, and it will be in the mobile section. So we can switch to the desktop again. Header conditions. You probably noticed that there's in the header you see the current conditions, and they're sort of iterating. And this can be disabled. So if you want to enable that, which is what I have here in the demo, then you simply click show, and the interval is the interval between these two switching to the other one. So now I have temperature, and I wait for a while, 5 seconds, and there we go, humidity, and it iterates like this. So this is the interval in seconds for the iteration. Menu display. As you can see here, the menu, in this case you have two options, either sticky or fixed, and they're explained here. So for the fixed, it means that it's fixed at the top of your page. So watch what happens when I scroll down. I have the menu here, and when I scroll down, it just stays at the top. I don't see it, right? Whereas if I put in sticky, what would happen is as soon as I start scrolling, now when I no longer see the menu would still stay up top of your screen. So that's the sticky option. So if I use the sticky option, when I scroll like this, the menu will stay at the top always. So you'll always see it. You'll always be able to click this and use it. So it's up to you what you want. And menu speed is simply the speed at which this thing opens. So this is probably, I think I have it set to the normal one. And if you select instantaneous, it means that when I click, it just appears. There's going to be no delay, and it's not going to have this roll down effect. So again, that's up to you what you want. Footer. The footer basically has 3 sections, and it's on all your pages. This is the left section, this is the middle section, and this is the right section. This left section is what you can customize. By default, you can see that we have current date and time. That's what we have here. And it already uses the formats that you specified here. So if I select current date and time, that's what I see here. That's the default. I see it here. Now, if I change it, I can change it to just date or just time, or I can put a custom text. So if I just put in text, then here I would see the word text. So it's up to you what you want. Just leave it like that. And a global font size, that would be the size of all the fonts. So they have some default size. If I change this to large, then all the fonts, all text will be slightly larger. So the heading will be slightly larger than this. This will be slightly larger than what it currently is. So it's up to you. And obviously, if you click small, if you use small, it's going to be smaller. So that basically applies to all text on all pages. So headings are going to be slightly smaller, body text is going to be slightly smaller, and you can do the same thing for graphs. But again, I would probably go with this. One last thing I want to say is please don't change this middle part of the footer. It's not even possible to change in the main settings. You probably have to go to the code, but I would please ask you to leave the copyright and leave all these links here, because that's the only thing I ask for if you use my template, which obviously is for free. And this last section, debugging mode, if there are any problems with your site, then I would probably ask you to turn this on, because it shows all sorts of things, and however, you should always leave it off. Under normal circumstances, you will always have this off, because even if your page is working 100% fine, it will still show some unwanted messages, because it also shows notices, which are not errors, basically just messages from PHP about what it's doing, and you would see them directly on the page. And so that's something you should always leave off. And just in case you have any problems and you email me saying, oh, Joachim, this doesn't work, then I might say, okay, you know what, just turn on the debug mode, and I will look at what's happening on your server. So it's off by default, and unless you have any problems and I ask you to do it, just leave it off. And once we're done, we just hit save. Now, as soon as I hit save, it's going to create a new file called config.php. And this file is the main settings file for all, and it's used by all pages. All pages of the template use this config file, and it basically has all this information saved there. And also, as soon as I create that file, it saves your passwords. The passwords we specified here, the admin password and the update password. So at that point, I can no longer access this settings page without using this password. In other words, I will have to log in as an admin and then go through the template control panel to get to this site, this setup.php, because it already will ask me for that password. And however, because the template knows that it now just created that file, so it knows that you must be the admin because you're the first person who ever accessed this site. So the first time you save this, the first time you enter this, it's going to automatically log you in. So just don't be surprised, because you will be already logged in without actually specifying the password, because it knows that it was the first time and you specified it here. And at this point, I should also say that the way this works is that when you log in as an admin, you stay logged in until you close the browser. So if I log in as an admin, I can just use the page. You don't have to enter the password to access every single page. You will stay logged in until you either log out, there's a button for that, or until you close the browser. Because the login is using sessions, and sessions are always cleared when you close the browser. And some browsers actually keep them. So I think with Chrome, which is what I'm using, I think you can even, if you reopen your browser within 20 minutes, you're probably still going to be logged in. But if you just turn off your computer and you turn it on next day, you won't be logged in. However, there is an option which you probably know from other pages. It's called Remember Me, and if you click Remember Me, it's going to save a cookie on your local computer, and on that particular computer, you will be logged in automatically when you visit your site. So you will see what I mean later when it's all set up. But for now, there is one last thing I want to say. If you hit save and you get a message saying that the config file could not be created, then what it means is that you don't have correct permissions set for the template folder. The template folder requires write permissions in order to create this config file. And if that directory, the template root, is not writable, then obviously this file cannot be created, and it will give you this message. Now, if you get that message, do not close this page, because if you close it, you're going to lose everything you filled in, because it wasn't saved, and you're just going to lose it. So in that case, just leave it open. I intentionally have this dialog popping up in a new tab so that this page stays open. And if you get that, you can simply go to your server, change the permissions, and then go here and hit save again without having to fill in everything again. So that's just in case you have that problem, so you know. So now we've basically set up the main template. Now we have everything here, and now we're ready to continue.